Good morning. Welcome back to another episode of Stand on Guard. I'm your host, David Krayden. Happy Saturday. Looks like a sunny day, but very cold here on the outskirts of our nation's capital, where everything can happen and usually does. And we'll get back to that in a moment.
So we are in a very precarious position in this country. We need political change, but we also need the resolve to resist.
It's almost nice to have a weekend just to take a deep breath, catch your breath. There's been so much going on here in the last few days. I know some yahoos out there have been talking about Justin Trudeau resigning. It's nonsense, balderdash. There's no intention of resigning. No, not at all. In fact, if you look at what's happening right now, it's quite clear. If you have any political sense at all, I know so many of you who watch this show have finely tuned political senses. What is Justin Trudeau up to right now? Now, this is a man who's very good at campaigning. He's very lousy at leading the country. He's very bad at being a national leader, at being the prime minister, but he's a good campaigner. You recall in 2015, almost 10 years ago now, he was in third place when he went up against Stephen Harper, who was prime minister. Stephen Harper expected to win that election. That was going to be his last term. He was expecting a majority. He had some people running his campaign that shouldn't have been, and I won't get into that because I know both of them, and I really, really don't want to even talk about them or mention their names on this broadcast. But the point is, Trudeau started that campaign in third place, convinced Canadians that he was the guy who cared. He did the Bill Clinton act, like, I feel your pain. And there really wasn't a lot of pain at the time, actually. The Harper years were pretty good. And he convinced Canadians that he was the guy. He thinks he can do it again. But what does he need? He needs somebody to be the enemy. And it's not working with Pierre Poilievre. He's at least 20 to 25 points behind Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives. The Liberal Party is in third place in some polls. So he's not working when he sets up Pierre Poilievre. But he thinks it can work if he sets up Donald Trump. And he, as I've said over the last week, if he co-ops the premiers, if he co-ops the leader of the official opposition, Pierre Poilievre, and they all join his team Trudeau, not Team Canada, it's Team Trudeau, then he's got a hope in hell of convincing Canadians that it's Justin Trudeau against Donald Trump, Canada against the United States. So, yes, clearly, Justin Trudeau wants a trade war with the United States. He deliberately went out of his way to make the outrageous and absurd comments the other day about Americans being misogynistic for not electing Kamala Harris and voting for Donald Trump. He had deliberately tried to be a pain in the ass by saying that. He wanted to antagonize Donald Trump. He wants a trade war. He wants Canada to get antagonistic towards the Americans because he thinks that's the only way he can win. Now, that's my analysis of this, having thought this over for the past few days. And who, of course, is he co-opted is Doug Ford. I'm not going to show Doug Ford's embarrassing, pathetic clip about how he's going to, we're going to give the Americans what for. We're going to shut off the energy for 1.5 million homes. Now he's talking about no more Jack Daniels coming across the border. Yeah, he's going to a tariff on American booze. That'll get them. But of course, all he is he's Trudeau's stooge. And every time Trudeau needs a premier, a willing idiot, it's always Doug Ford, the faux conservative, the phony conservative, Doug Ford. During the pandemic, Mr. Lockdown King. Yeah, Jason Kenney was just as bad in Alberta, but In Ontario, it was Doug Ford, the lockdown king. Push harder. Social distancing. Keep your mask on. Don't go to church. Don't get a haircut. Doug Ford was the lockdown king. During the Freedom Convoy, who was on side with Justin Trudeau 100% with invoking the Emergencies Act? Doug Ford. Doug Ford again. Who just stood by while the mayor of Emo Township had his paycheck had his bank account garnished by Human Rights Tribunal? Who stood by and watched that? Doug Ford, the phony conservative. So Doug Ford is out there pushing Trudeau's agenda. He wants a trade war because Justin Trudeau told him so. I've no time or respect for Doug Ford. Now, what is the issue here? Well, I'm going to show you a couple clips. It's quite simple. There doesn't need to be a trade war. We don't need to be hit with 25% tariffs on all Canadian products. We don't need to have any kind of war of words or otherwise with Donald Trump. He just wants us to fix the border. Justin Trudeau is not serious about it. Let's hear from Premier Scott Moe here, who says we need a new election.
Prime Minister, what specifically did you hear from him?
What we were looking for was, what does an engagement plan with the U.S. look like moving forward from a federal government's perspective, and how do us as subnational leaders support that engagement plan? And second, and this was primarily due to President-elect Trump's demands around border security, of which I'd say we agree with. We want to have, increased border security on behalf of Canadians, whether it be drugs or illegal migrants. We need to keep those bad things out of Canada and out of Saskatchewan from our perspective.
Now, you've told media in the past that you might make a suggestion of putting more military patrol at the borders. Is that something that was discussed?
So what I had suggested is we're having trouble hiring Canadian border security officials. We're a couple thousand short, I understand, as we sit. We're having trouble as well hiring RCMP officers. And so I don't know that, fishing in the RCMP officer well is going to produce us a lot of results when it comes to border security. And so my suggestion was to actually bring the CBSA under an arm of the military, count it as your 2% military spend, and then allow your military to help with some of the short-term staffing challenges that we have in that space.
There was some aggressive pushback against any Trump tariffs, including export bans. Ontario Premier Doug Ford has been talking about restricting electricity sales to the U.S. Is Saskatchewan considering any restrictions along that line as well, whether that be oil, potash, et cetera?
No, what we'd be looking for is how do we actually advance this conversation to get away from the talk around tariffs and get back to doing what we do in North America, which is we are very much part of the energy and the food security supply chain. However, in saying that, we've just heard today that the federal government may be looking at export tariffs on oil, potash, and uranium, export tariffs on our own products, so taxing Canadians on products that we are exporting, which is exactly ridiculous as it sounds. And most certainly we would say that any talk of that is not on in this province. It's a betrayal of those that work in the industry. It's a betrayal, I would say, more broadly of Canadians. So we would encourage, if that's where the federal government is looking for retaliatory action, that they very quickly reconsider. And we would say, in addition to that, that maybe it's time for Canadians to have a say and a choice, and to determine who they would like to have a mandate, a 4-year mandate to negotiate with the incoming Trump administration. We see President-elect Trump with one of the strongest mandates that we've seen in recent history to negotiate on behalf of Americans over the course of the next 4 years. Alongside that, we see a Republican majority in the Senate and in the House. We're over our 4 years of what would be considered the norm for our minority administration here in Canada, and maybe what we need is someone to have the same mandate in Canada to negotiate with that incoming Trump administration. And so we would ask Prime Minister Trudeau to do the right thing, to give Canadians the opportunity to make the choice on who is going to represent them at the table.
I just wanted to let Scott Moe talk there because I think he's making perfect sense. We know we should not ever allow the federal government to put tariffs on provincial commodities, namely energy sector, namely oil and gas or potash in Saskatchewan's case. So no, that's a bad idea. And before I forget, please help this station right now by liking it, liking the broadcast, subscribing. Subscriptions have been going cratering the last couple of days. I don't know why. Probably because I'm talking about things YouTube doesn't want to talk about. Yesterday's episode, my interview with Mia Hughes, was just absolutely suppressed. I encourage you to watch that interview. This is a courageous woman who's doing work on a file that journalists don't want to touch. You know, I've touched the file quite a bit, and she, I think, is the expert in the field on this, on the whole transgender issue and how it's not gender affirming care. But anyway, I encourage you to watch yesterday's show because YouTube did not want you to watch it. It's quite apparent. And it was a great interview. Really good. So here we are. Scott Moe is identifying that Trudeau wants to up the ante with Donald Trump. He wants to put tariffs on Canadian or provincial commodities, products. And so what's the point here? I mean, before I show you how Quebec and Newfoundland and Labrador are responding, this is not Team Trudeau. Is not working out for Justin Trudeau because the only guy he's really got on side is Doug Ford, the phony conservative, and the extreme left woke Premier of BC, David Eby. There's a combination, Eby and Ford, in Trudeau's pocket. But let's hear what the public safety minister has to say about the urgency of fixing the border. Do you think the Trudeau government has any intention? All right. Do you think they have any intention of doing anything about the border? Like really fixing the border at all? Because we just heard Scott Moe say what nobody else is talking about. They can't even get people hired at CBSA or the RCMP anymore. Now, why? They've lowered the standard so much that anybody can join. I mean, if it takes you 10 minutes to run a mile, you can probably get in. But that's indicative of how screwed up things are right now. Let's listen to Dominique LeBlanc, a pathetic excuse for a minister.
When and how will you unveil the billion plus in spending that we're told you're going to do? How will that roll out?
Well, it'll roll out when it rolls out. What we rolled out to the premiers tonight were details of our plan.
This is called rolling out a pile of BS. This is manure. He's hawking here. Roll out 3 times? It'll roll out when it rolls out. Thank you so much for the clarification, LeBlanc. How do these people get into cabinet? How do they stay in the cabinet for 9 years? How does a man like this pretend to be a public safety minister? I mean, do you feel safer listening to this man? Is he concerned about the border? Not at all. No, it'll roll out someday. Donald Trump wants to hear it's going to roll out today because there's a problem here. I want this to happen now. Now, I'm getting to Danielle Smith's response, but let's hear what the premiers of Quebec and Newfoundland talk, especially the premier of Quebec. I found this fascinating. He talked to Donald Trump at the reopening of Notre Dame in Paris.
Board in Ontario has threatened to stop selling power to the U.S. amid tariff threats from U.S. President Donald Trump. Is that something either parties here will consider as well?
These tariffs will have significant impact on families and macroeconomies on both sides of the border. We hope it is just bluster. We're preparing as if it is not. There will be no winners in a trade war. Certainly, from Newfoundland and Labrador's perspective, we have no interest in stopping the flow of oil and gas, our incredibly valuable and now well sought after world-class oil and gas to the United States.
Yeah, I had the chance to meet with Mr. Trump last weekend in Paris, and he told me very clearly that we can avoid those tariffs if we do what needs to be done with the borders. He doesn't want to see any more illegal immigrants coming from Canada to U.S. So I think the best choice right now for Mr. Trudeau is to table a plan with money, with a number of people to better secure the border. I think we have to do that. It's a lot better than getting 25% tariffs starting on January 21. So I prefer that than starting a war and stopping sending energy to United States.
I think we all do. Very well stated, Premier Legault. I don't have a lot of time for Premier Legault and a lot of other areas, but he seems to have some common sense when it comes to this issue. Fix the border. Donald Trump just said, hey, get serious about the border. At least look like you're serious. Do something. Don't talk about it'll roll out when it rolls out. I'm not a fool. And Canadians aren't fools either. And they know what Trudeau's doing here. Trudeau has no intention of fixing the border. And he likes the conflict. He wants to keep it going because it's all about Justin Trudeau, the narcissist, the ego-driven man. It's all about staying in power. It's his last chance. Nothing else is working. He's plummeting. He's cratering. His popularity is as low as any prime minister in the history of Canada. Well, since they've been taking polls on the subject matter, it's the lowest. Nobody has gone lower than Justin Trudeau. Even the darkest days of Brian Mulroney's last days, even the darkest days of his father's last days, he was never as unpopular as Justin Trudeau is today. So Trudeau is doing whatever he can to stay in. And like I said, if you're hearing people say, oh, he's going to resign and he's going to put a woman in his place, well, that is the most ridiculous rumor I have heard in years in this city. And it's not even, to tell you the truth, it's not even a rumor on Parliament Hill. It's not a rumor except amongst some YouTubers. Oh, I think I've made it up. And that's all I'm going to say about that. But what does Danielle Smith have to say?
Alberta's government is taking immediate action to crack down on illegal activities at our shared Alberta-U.S. border, namely illegal migrants and the trafficking of drugs and guns. This suite of measures will curb illegal border activities and strengthen our nation's border security. We're investing $29 million to create a new unit, the Interdiction Patrol Team, or IPT, under the command of the Alberta Sheriffs. This unit will be supported by over 50 specially trained sheriffs. 4 drug patrol dogs, critical to ensure reasonable suspicion to search vehicles. 10 cold weather surveillance drones that can operate in high winds with dedicated pilots. And 4 narcotics analyzers to test for illicit drugs. The IPT will be made up of 7 teams of sheriffs. We will also create a 2-kilometer deep border zone, which is a red zone deemed critical infrastructure to enable the sheriffs to arrest individuals found attempting to cross the border illegally or attempting to traffic illegal drugs or weapons without needing a warrant.
In Ontario has threatened to stop selling.
Yeah, sorry about that. We have bad edit there, so we'll be. Sometimes you have to improvise. Anyway, and just heard that for the sound quality of some of the clips is low. Sorry about that. I don't know why. I've got the volume turned up, but that's if you wondered what I was distracted about there. That's what it was. So Danielle Smith, Premier Danielle Smith, is taking it seriously. In fact, without even having a provincial police force, she's putting the sheriffs in charge of this. Of course, what's the difference? You've got sheriffs, you've got police. So do it yourself. Alberta is very good at doing it themselves because the federal government will not do it for them. The federal government just wants to scoop up their natural resources and wants to put tariffs on their oil and gas. That's all the federal government is good for. Now, I think this is great. Now, if Doug Ford would start talking about fixing the border instead of putting taxes on American whiskey, maybe we'd be getting someplace. But clearly, as I've said, this is all about Justin Trudeau running for cover. This is what he does. Now, let's listen. What's going on with Chrystia Freeland? Chrystia Freeland has limited days left on the job. She will probably be gone by the end of next week, maybe by Wednesday, maybe even right after she reads her fall economic update on literally almost the last day of fall. And she's not long for this cabinet position. Mark Carney is, of course, being touted as the replacement. I don't know if Carney really wants to be part of the sinking ship. I think they're giving him all kinds of incentives right now. That's what's going on. And if he says no, they're going to have to find another finance minister because Freeland's going under the bus with a lot of other female cabinet ministers and members of parliament that Trudeau has nothing but contempt for, despite claiming to be the master feminist. He is going to be getting rid of Freeland. And just watch Freeland here. This is Andrew Scheer making a point. And I'm sorry, that's not going to work. Okay, let's. This is a little better.
Doing my best to support.
This is phenomenal. Now, I want to thank my friend the pleb for actually being at this event and putting it up last night. I'm borrowing it from you. Thank you so much. But he was actually there, and this was gone unreported in all of the mainstream media. Nobody's talking about this. This is a former Liberal MP at Pierre Poilievre's event in Montreal yesterday. And listen to what she said.
I was doing my best to support and put my community and work hard. And maybe they didn't want people like me, but it's not a big deal. We have a real leader who can bring common sense to Canada. Happy for you. And good luck, Mrs. Poilievre.
Wow, isn't that incredible? I didn't even know she was going to be here. A former Liberal MP, another strong woman who's decided to support the common sense Conservatives and bring home the country we knew and still love.
Yeah, and once again, another woman who has very little time for Justin Trudeau. She probably had some nice conversations with Trudeau as well. And I would remind you again, if you haven't seen the interview that Jordan Peterson conducted with former Liberal MP Selena Cesar Chivanis, watch it. She says she was literally terrified, scared to death of Trudeau because he was so dismissive and so intimidating and so arrogant. So it's really worth watching. But there's another dissatisfied female Liberal MP or former Liberal MP. Very interesting. So what's up with Freeland? Yeah, let's get back to this because this is, I know none of us really have much stomach for Chrystia Freeland. She has been so supercilious, dismissive, arrogant, completely haughty in her demeanor and her speech. But she looks right now like she is literally falling apart. And I mean, she's had moments where she can't seem to speak. It doesn't seem to be able to be thinking. And if she's having a medical emergency, she should resign from politics now and seek better medical attention and get out of one of the highest stress jobs in the world, being a politician in the Trudeau government trying to defend this horrible record. But she'll be there until Justin Trudeau throws her under the bus. But let's listen to how she reacts to this question.
Mr. Freeland, we've been reporting all week about tension between your office and the Prime Minister's office over the fiscal policy in this country. We've said that the Prime Minister is again in talks with Mark Carney to join the government, and the Prime Minister appears unwilling to personally defend you in public. How can you stay in the government when the Prime Minister continually tries to cut you off at the knees like that, and will you fight back against this effort to replace you?
Well, thank you for the question. For me, it is a huge privilege that I do not take for granted to serve Canada and Canadians every single day. It's a big deal. There are kids here who went to school with my daughter who are great young innovators, and I'm really proud to be able to offer them something that will help their company. I'm proud and grateful to be able to serve in the cabinet of the Prime Minister, and I really don't spend a lot of time focusing on Ottawa gossip. My focus is on doing what I can to serve Canada and Canadians in what's a really challenging time for our country.
Doing my best to support and put my community and work hard, and maybe they didn't.
Sorry about that. It was still having some volume problems with it. I don't know why. We're at the end of the show. Hopefully we get this fixed by tomorrow. I don't no idea whether the levels are lower today. I've got the volume turned up. My apologies for that. These things do happen. I hope you heard at least some of my analysis this morning, which I think is probably half the reason you tune in to the show, and appreciate you being here. Wanted to make a comment here at the end. I got a really nasty gram yesterday on my X, claiming that I was some Ivy League defender of the Conservative Party, and I'm not going to go into it, but I didn't respond to the individual. I'll respond to it on here because it's we don't need this incredible hostility that exists between supporters or members of the Conservative Party of Canada and supporters or members of the People's Party of Canada. Now, I don't belong to any political party. I assume Pierre Poilievre is going to be the next Prime Minister of Canada, and I think that's a good thing. I'm a personal friend of Maxime Bernier. I love the work he's done. I agree with just about everything he's ever said on economics, social policy, and I think he's doing what he thinks he needs to do. But he is the first one to say that Pierre Poilievre will be the next Prime Minister of Canada with a huge majority. He said that the last time he was on my show, and he'll be on my show again because I think dialogue is good. I think we need to talk to each other, and we can't behave like the communists behaved towards the socialists throughout the 19th, 20s, 30s, and 40s, when there was the worst enemy in the world to Joseph Stalin was a socialist. And we cannot have this bifurcation, this animosity, this hostility, because basically we agree on the important things, whether in that camp or the other camp. And I deal with both camps because I'm not a politician. And I've been upfront with everybody in the past in terms of my political party membership. I was a member of the Reform Party. I was a member of the Canadian Alliance Party, and I was a member of the Conservative Party of Canada. I'm not a member of any party anymore because I have to criticize and I have to praise policies that come from different political parties. And I'm not in anybody's pocket. I'll always say that. I'll enunciate that again. And no matter who you support, you're welcome to watch the show, to listen to my assessment, to reject it or embrace it. That's what freedom of speech is all about. That's what this program is all about. Freedom of speech, not telling people they can't talk, not telling people that they have no right to express their political opinion, not telling people that they're canceled. And that's why I'm on this show. And I'll tell you that again and again. But that's an important part of what I think the values of this show are. And I just want to see Justin Trudeau gone. But it's not always just about Justin Trudeau. It's about principled conservatism or principled libertarianism, however you want to define the policies and the politics that we're articulating. And I think that's what there's a lot of people out there who won't know what to do once Justin Trudeau's gone, because it's 100% for them is about hating Justin Trudeau. And that's not what the show is all about. We have to talk about alternatives in policy. Anyway, I've said enough. Thank you for watching today. Here's a little reminder about Christmas.
Ho, 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 ho!
Enjoy the rest of your Saturday and the rest of your weekend, which is just starting, actually. And I'll be back again tomorrow with more of the news you need to know so we can all continue to resolve to resist.